wait, I need like a definition.
As long as it's like not what is that Facebook or what is that Snapchat, at least if it's like what is that TikTok, at least you still kind of got to him.
You know, the venue of the app. Oh, I have not downloaded the TikTok. I'm too afraid. I don't understand it.
Fair enough.
It's yeah.
If you have it,
I have it to watch some TikToks. I am not participating in the platform.
not producing the TikToks.
I will say that
okay, for the record, that's what my best friend said about Tinder. So I know you're talking nonsense. He was like, "Oh, Frederic, I have it. You know, I watch it." But I'm like, dude, come on, we know.
You watch it like it's old I Love Lucy episodes. Like I just watch it.
I just watch it. It's fine. I will say it cracks me up because at Ballet Met, you know, we're working with like real young dancers who are learning all this great stuff. And then on their breaks, they go and make a little TikTok. And I'm like, what is this? This is not dancing.
Right.
This is.
They do all sorts of interesting things. Yes.
They love it.
Yeah, ballet and TikTok doesn't necessarily go together. Not yet anyways. We'll make it happen.
Well, it just seems like such a waste of their skill set to only dance from like here up. I'm like, you guys have more than that. I don't know. It cracks me up every time.
That's really funny.
You
oh
are
my
too
goodness.
funny. No, that is really funny.
They do. They're just.
Is that it?
Like,
Is
these
it not? Can you not post pictures of your legs on TikTok? I don't know the rules. Is it all?
No, it's just most of the dances are like from waist up that require movement. But you have to do them. It seems that the other requirement is that you have to do them like you don't care. So it's very like whatever.
Well, the other thing is it's the equalizer, right? Like everybody looks good when you're just doing hand movements. We all have that
true. Yeah,
I mean, the full body shot, the legs are all over the place, then you know there's issues.
That is a quality point. It is the great, people that said they would never be dancers will do TikToks. That's why parents are doing it with their kids, you know?
You got to think also that as soon as they turn the screen this way, maybe they could do more, but you're stuck in this mode. So
oh, is that how? Yeah, you can only see it one way on TikTok. So I'm learning so much.
You know, I'm going to go old school with YouTube. You know, there's a great video I saw a couple weeks ago that went crazy on this principal, I think out of Virginia, called Dr. Lee. And he did this thing with, you know, you can't touch this. Dun, 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 about
Kelly, did you see it?
Oh my, it's just hilarious. And sent it to our school, and they played it to the whole staff and everything. They hadn't seen it yet, and but it's kind of a TikTok like, but it's done by the school, and it's really good.
The back to school video production game is really strong. There was a teacher in Atlanta that did this whole thing with like a dance squad. It was awesome. I was like, not that I could ever be a teacher for a myriad of reasons, but I just added that to the bottom of the list. It was so many things. It was awesome. I was like, I can't video produce anything. And she was an amazing dancer, Dionysia. Love it.
Hey, Frederic, as we're just killing time. I've known of you. Obviously, I've met you only a couple times, but I didn't know you had an Emmy Award or a couple. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, well, it's important that the younger generation understands that just because you're a scientist, you don't have to be a straight geeky weird person. You know, just like you have a great crossover and be like Allen Iverson, you can have a couple of Emmys. So yeah, I produced 2 short films and 1 Emmys. So
that was kind of cool.
The best thing is when a kid actually comes to the office or wherever and he or she holds it like, oh my God, and they're taking all these pictures and so it's fun. But it's to make sure people understand that science is everywhere and for everyone. And if you're passionate about sports or entertainment, do your thing, but you can still be a scientist.
Perfect. Absolutely. Awesome. Beautifully said.
Well, that's the event, right? We're done.
That's it. We did it.
Now, for all disclosure,
Kelly, Kirsten gets her one-liner. Kelly gets her one-liner. We're done.
Wrap it.
We are now live on Facebook, in case anybody else didn't see the announcement.
Thank you, Drew.
Well, just before my clock says 5 o'clock, for all disclosure, I am a geek and a nerd, and I wear that badge proudly. I do.
Excellent, excellent. I think you came to the right place. I think this is. I think this is the right. Kelly is literally calling us from a lab, so I feel like we really have. and Kirsten has so many books, she could probably murder someone in the game Clue. Look at all those books.
And the best part is she read all of them. I know her well.
Whatever. She may have read some of them. I never put it past anyone. That was what was so hard in law school when you'd go to the professor to talk about how you didn't understand the book in class and they were the ones who wrote it. It was always really awkward. You're like, oh, I just don't get this writing. No good.
That's a good one.
Automatic B. All right. So, got some folks coming on. I want to get, you know me, Dionysia. I'm watching that clock. It is 5 o'clock. I'm ready to go. But I'll give people a couple minutes. We'll give them 2 minutes.
Yes, we have lots hopping on.
Great.
They're excited to talk about Frederic's Emmys.
Yes. Hey, y'all, as you jump on, feel free to mute yourself. I see some people already. And you're welcome to join us on video if you're able. We would love to see your smiling faces. And we have the chat going. So Dionysia will message everyone in the chat. You can say hi there. We'll be using it throughout the session. Roll call.
Roll call.
Love it. Everyone pop up the chat. We'll be using it throughout so we can keep the conversations going, keep the conversation generative, which is my word of the week. I just learned it. I'm using it every day. I like it, isn't it? It means nothing.
Did you say
I don't know what it means.
degenerative or generative?
The reverse. Yes, just take the duh off.
Degenerate?
Degenerate, just degenerate. Yes, I love this. Introducing yourself. Great. Hi, Chris. Hi, Tina. Wonderful. Oh, who isn't? Who isn't a Kelly Lewis fan in the house? Love it.
Love it.
Kirsten.
Get in line.
You're killing me, Christine.
This is great. And this is exactly what we want to keep going. We definitely want to hear from folks in the chat.
Hello, Jen Goldberg.
Hi. Thanks so much.
Pre-meeting jitters. Everybody gets all quiet and weird.
Really? Even, come on, Brooke. That's so rare.
I was like, first of all, I never get quiet. I don't know. That's not a setting I have. All right, we have folks coming on.
Welcome, Padma from Germany.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for calling. This is wonderful.
Yes, make those connections, Jean. Let's make those connections. Who's here? Who knows who? Who's excited to see someone's actual face, which is always exciting.
Make some connections, yeah. All right. Well, I want to be cognizant and respectful of everybody's time. So if BioOhio is ready, I say let's get started.
Let's roll. All right. Hey, you know, good evening for most of you. Good afternoon for some, and just welcome. I'm John Lewis with BioOhio. We're really happy to have everybody here. We've got, gosh, lots of people from around the U.S., Germany, Canada. Welcome and have fun today. Since we have some newer people, really we want to, give you 30 seconds. We've been around BioOhio for 33 years, supporting the bioscience industry. We love this element of diversity and inclusion in all of its definitions. So we've been doing this for a long time, and just love this. You're going to love this program. Yes, I want to take a really quick plug and thank HBA today for partnering with us, and Bio for partnering with us, and AtriCure for partnering with us. So thank you to those key sponsors and stuff. And let's see, we have a couple of cool things. We want to shift this over to a couple-minute video, thanks to Bio. So want to kick this over and Enjoy.
I'm originally from Harlem, New York. Back in the 70s and 80s, I was predominantly in a African-American environment, and I was a part of the culture, a deep, beautiful, rich culture in Harlem. My mom, she wanted the best for us, and she believed that was from an academic standpoint. So my mom found a program which took gifted students from urban areas and helped us get ready for prep school, and was accepted into a school in Connecticut. When I came to the school and I started befriending kids there who were white and came from very affluent families, my head was spinning that people lived this way, and they didn't quite understand me because they weren't exposed to differences themselves. So what you have here is a mix of people in an environment where there's a dominant culture that is mostly white and affluent students. So the institution itself supported that dominant culture. And I believe myself and the few people who came from Harlem and other urban areas were not asked, but expected to assimilate into the dominant culture to be able to be successful, both academically and socially. I go back home in the summer times, and my language and my vernacular and even the way I dress was a little different, and people would ask me, what happened to you? Where did you go? Why are you different? And so then I found myself in between two worlds. Obviously, there was a lot of identity issues with that. I can say pretty confidently, after those 4 years, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about diversity. And without knowing the term inclusion, I learned a lot about how institutions can support people who are not necessarily a part of the dominant culture if they are actively and intentionally being inclusive. We want to make sure that the biotech industry not only supports all populations, especially those that have been historically and systemically disenfranchised, but we also want to reflect the population that we serve. And I'm optimistic that we together, in collaboration with our partners and our stakeholders, will get there.
Sweet. And we're just going to continue this trend here and shift to Rashawn at AtriCure, and let's just go with that.
Thank you, BioOhio, for allowing AtriCure to be part of this very important event. We're thrilled for the opportunity of supporting STEM programming across the spectrum, and particularly today's topic. For those who are not familiar with AtriCure, we're a medical device firm headquartered just north of Cincinnati in Mason, Ohio. At our headquarters, we design, manufacture, and distribute cardiovascular surgical products used by heart surgeons globally. In addition to our office in Mason, we have offices in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Redwood City, California, and internationally in Amsterdam and Hong Kong. I started with AtriCure in 2018, and at that time, we're really growing and putting increased focus on our diversity and inclusion efforts. We want to not only hire the best and most diverse group of experts, but we know we need to encourage programming and interest in STEM to help inspire more students to consider fields that they may not have been exposed to otherwise. I can personally relate to Elliot's story. I grew up in an inner city school system in Cleveland, Ohio, where there wasn't an emphasis on STEM at all. I actually didn't know what an engineer was until I reached college. So I know firsthand that we're missing an opportunity to expose younger students to STEM disciplines and why conversations around this topic are extremely important and necessary. I look forward to today's discussion, and thank you again for having us.
Awesome. Well, we have a great group, and I think it's so timely. You know, I've been to many countries around the world. I've lived in Jamaica, Korea, and China, so I know, being, you know, definitely in the minority element. I thought it was amazing this morning in the Columbus Dispatch in Columbus, Ohio, an article from where I grew up, Bexley, Ohio, about an African-American family that grew up there and still is there. Really a cool article about how they kind of both struggled, the opportunities and challenges with that. So this is ongoing and awesome. We have 3 great speakers. I'm not going to delay this, but I'm going to take 20 seconds for each of these because I like to pull a little facts out just so you can read their bios. It's not in their bio, but you know, Kirsten, for example, just, when you ever meet her sometime, ask her about the minor explosions she had at her home growing up, that her parents had to kind of deal with. But then she becomes a National Academy of Sciences executive. So you can still blow up your house and still become an executive. Frederic, I don't know. I don't have a Wikipedia page, nor do I have several Emmy awards in my office. Frederic does, and he also clearly leads a great science organization. And I can't say enough about Kelly Lewis. Entire career dealing with K through 12, helping our entire future. And if you see her backdrop, all these flags in her lab of all the students and where they've gone, she's amazing. I turn it over to Brooke Cartus, our amazing Master of Ceremonies, Director of Awesome at ImprovEdge. Brooke, you're on.
Thank you so much, John. We are so excited to be here. I'm here along with my co-facilitator and producer this evening, Dionysia Williams. At ImprovEdge, we believe improv changes everything. We use the tenets of improvisation and marry them with, you guessed it, science, neuroscience, psychology, and sociology with partners at University of Pennsylvania, University of Massachusetts, and The Ohio State University to make sure we're driving behavioral change. And nowhere is that change more important right now with our partners in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, which I, along with our colleague at ImprovEdge, Karen Hewitt, lead. Karen is the Deputy Director of Kaleidoscope Youth Center here in Central Ohio, and she couldn't make it here tonight, but I'm very excited to welcome Dionysia Williams. And Dionysia, if you can introduce yourself, and then we will let the panelists introduce themselves.
Yes, I can't wait to hear from all of the panelists. My background is actually as a musical theater actress, director, choreographer, and teacher. I've graduated from Wright State University with my BFA, and then I promptly moved to New York City like you do. From there, I was one of the lucky ones who got to tour across the country and internationally, performing in many different Broadway musicals. Now I am based in Columbus, Ohio, and I'm still heavily involved in the arts and arts education. I've been with ImprovEdge for the last 7 years. I am a senior facilitator as well as their director of talent development. And I'm so excited to be here with you all today.
Dionysia will be watching the chat, and we really encourage you to get on the chat, and we'll also be launching polls throughout our session. So I'm very excited to get into this. Dionysia's here because she's an educator. I'm a lawyer and an opera singer, so we're not going to go through my bio. If you like either one of those things, we can talk later. Let's get to our panelists. We are here to talk about how to bring STEM to underrepresented populations in science and healthcare, talking about access to equal education. And I would love for our panelists to introduce themselves. So Kelly, let's start with you.
All right. Well, I'm obviously, as you guys now know, a career educator. Been in here a long time, and I teach a biotechnology program for Eastland-Fairfield Career and Technical Schools.
Wonderful. Kirsten. Kirsten, can you hear me?
You're on mute.
Muted. All right, caught on that. All right, that'll hopefully be my only one for today. I'm Kirsten Ellenbogen. I'm president and CEO at Great Lakes Science Center in Cleveland, Ohio.
Wonderful. And Frederic.
Hello, everyone. I'm Frederic Bertley, President and CEO of the Center of Science and Industry, also in Ohio. Happy to be here on today's panel.
Wonderful. So I'm going to start this panel with this very complicated scientific question. How are you all doing? Tell me how you're doing. Give me one sentence. We're in an unprecedented time, according to Jiffy Lube, who just emailed me for the 30th time. Everyone loves the word unprecedented now. Tell me one sentence. How are you? How was your day? What's going on? Kelly, go first.
Okay. Actually, I'm a little bit more excited today than yesterday. I got to see some of my students as we passed out the materials that they're going to use for the extent of this distance learning, and just excited to get things started, a little nervous about how things will go on Monday, but ready to go.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. Kirsten?
I'd say I'm having a good day in a tough time. We're at that step where we're having to make some tough decisions at Great Lakes Science Center. But today was one of the days where I did go into our facility. We're trying to make sure that we don't have staff coming in unless we have to be there. But it was a great day to be there because we are transitioning off our last week of camp and getting everything set up for a new program next week. Learning Labs is what the program is called. So honestly, it was just so uplifting to see everything in motion.
That's awesome. Thank you for your honesty there. Frederic?
Well, I went to bed after hearing yet another phenomenal speech by President Barack Obama, and that put some wind in my sails, lifted my wings up, and I woke up this morning saying, you know what? There will be a better day beyond this craziness we find ourselves in.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm sure those of you who know what improvisation means, it means always saying yes, and we know right now positivity, as Frederic mentioned, is more important than ever. And as Kirsten and Kelly alluded to, sometimes more difficult than ever. You know, I'd love to hear from you all about how you use the power of positivity and really dropping assumptions when you're trying to lift up groups of young scientists and maybe access traditionally underrepresented populations that, just like that video from Bio said, you know, maybe don't see yourself depicted, or that story from Rashawn. So I'll open it up to the panelists, and please get in the chat, ask your questions. We want to hear from you. But first I open it to our esteemed panelists. So Frederic, if you want to take that first question first.
Yeah, you know, it's a tricky thing. I mean, talking about lifting up folks, especially from underserved communities in general, but especially in STEM, I do want to comment on one thing, and that's really, we use this word diversity, equity, and a whole bunch of acronyms, but then we always end up with inclusion as the final word. And I just want to submit to all of us today that we reflect on what that means, because words matter. And so by saying diversity and inclusion, well, that means you're being included in something, which means you're already setting up the power base that somebody said they've been excluding you all these years, and now we're ready to exclude you. And, you know, Elliot and Rashawn, I loved Elliot, the video. Rashawn, I loved your comments. I wasn't picked for a gifted program. I'll be blunt. I was not included into something, you know? And so as we think about really making real and lasting change, I don't want to be included in your world because you said, nah, I'm okay and I'm acceptable to be in your world. It should be equity. It should be about equity. And I should be allowed to walk this earth and pursue a STEM career, pursue a non-STEM career, get, you know, past that bar like you did, Brooke, on your first attempt. Like, whatever it is, it shouldn't be about inclusion because you're defining that somebody has said it's okay now to let you in the boys club or the girls club. So that's how I'll open it up.
I love that. Yeah. I want to hear from you, Kirsten, and you, Kelly. You know, what do you think about, and I know this is always at the forefront, but what assumptions do you have to drop? I mean, I love that point from Frederic, you know, that these words are thrown around so loosely now, and we're hearing them now more than ever, but what do they really mean? And as we try to pull through and access, you know, youth that maybe isn't exposed to STEM, how do we reach folks?
We were talking today about starting online, and students have the opportunity when they're online to either be video or not. And you know, when you see somebody, when you see kids, when you see adults, sometimes we have preconceived notions based on somebody's appearance. And I'm actually very excited a little bit to start online because those preconceived notions, because of somebody's dress, because of somebody's hair, because of somebody's physical appearance, isn't necessarily going to be there this year. And I think that's going to, when we finally come back together, we'll have a different type of relationship as we move to an in-class, hopefully, option at some point. But I do think getting as much access to students as possible in terms of inclusion, letting people see, anybody, people of color, women, whomever, that there are people within your field that do look like you. And I think that's really important for students to see as well.
I love that. That's great. Keep the chats going. Kirsten, what do you have to add to that?
So I would add, getting back to the improv, how powerful it is when you do say yes and you drop the assumptions. We had an extraordinary experience with that with Cleveland 8th graders. We work with Cleveland 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in these intensive programs that are developed with the curriculum team at our local school district. And so I'm excited to say that some things in Cleveland have changed, so we have to get you back and show you the program.
Oh, Rashawn, yes.
I know, right? I mean, this, well, and I hear what he was saying, because believe me, when I came in and we looked at where there was need, there was a lot of need. But let me shorten my answer and say the most extraordinary program we're doing is one that funders thought would be impossible when we first came to them. And that program is working with Cleveland 8th graders. So these are boys and girls in 8th grade around the city of Cleveland, around data, coding, Internet of Things, and blockchain databases. And let me tell you, we have better experiences explaining and getting 8th grade youth immersed in the concept of blockchain databases and actively thinking about how to use those and proposing concepts in a Shark Tank setup on how and why they should be partnering with these local organizations around blockchain databases. I have far more success working with Cleveland 8th graders on that, because when you think about blockchain databases, I mean, it's about privacy, right? And data protection. Nobody cares about privacy more than a teenager. There are brilliant ideas coming out of the work we're doing with Cleveland 8th graders, and they far exceed conversations that we have all around us in Cleveland, where there's a great deal of work going on around blockchain. So do not underestimate the youth you're working with. They are powerful partners in really making a terrific future.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that story. I want to pop up our first poll for everyone on our watching our panel to answer. And our first poll is about who your favorite scientist was growing up. And if your favorite scientist isn't listed, feel free to put it in the chat. But as you answer this poll, I want to get to our next question for our panelists. And panelists, you can also answer the question, I think, if you want. So don't hold back. You know, I want to go back to Frederic's concept, and this is also listed, you know, in something we talked about as in prepping for today, which is this concept of equity, right? We're seeing this shift from equality to equity, and we use the word equity in improvisation all the time, because the more diverse a team is in improv, the better the show. No one wants a show with 5 Brooks on stage, except my mom. You know, and she's just a super fan. You know, how do we make sure that the talent we're attracting as we try to reach youth and as we try to get them connected to this work is really attracting a you know, diverse thought and a really equity, instead of just saying, okay, we want to tokenize, or we want to get one person of color and one woman, and oh my gosh, we did it, we solved it. You know, how do you kind of overcome the challenges of tokenism, or this equality, you know, quotient that sometimes organizations have in their head, either subconsciously through unconscious bias or through past systems of discrimination?
Brooke, I'll jump in first. What a great question. And I think I really want to pick up some part on what Kelly was saying. You know, the fact that we're forced into this digital world, and a lot of times we're not seeing each other physically, that's helped to just allow people to speak their mind, and you're judging, if you will, or at least listening based on the content and the merits of what they're saying, not how they look, not if they're tall, short, dark, light, skinny, plumper. It's about the content. And I think that's critical, because when we look at the planet, there's 7.7 billion people on planet Earth. And except for genetically identical twins, we're all different. And that difference leads to that great breadth of humanity that allows for different thought, different ideas, different decision makings, different strengths and weaknesses that collectively make us stronger. And, you know, as soon as we get to embrace that, and I love it because you can actually look to science to explain that. Science will tell you that genetically we're different. You know, we're all humans, we're all made up of DNA, we all look different, we're all different. And so I think if we can embrace the wonderful biodiversity that makes up the 7.7 billion people, we should understand that none of us as individuals should be held in higher or lower esteem just because of X. But, you know, we all have a room at the, as Maya Angelou would say, just plenty of room at the end. We all need to be at the end together, because the one thing we do share is we're human beings and part of the human race. And so I think once we can embrace that, and science helps support that, you know, we're off to the races. How do we communicate it so people understand it literally? You know, that's a work in progress, but if we just look at the fact that not everybody's identical. So if you're part of this club or that club, but you look around all the people who are part of that club, they all look different. Even if it's all white people or all black people in a group, we all look different. So let's embrace those differences and keep it moving.
I love that. And, really thinking about, no one's a monolith and no community is all the same. And the judgments we make, we really have to completely drop them all. Kirsten, Kelly?
One of my students said to do, oh, I'm sorry, Kristen, you want to go ahead?
No, please, Kelly.
One of my students did a great speech for a project this year, and one of the things that she focused on was the importance of bringing our sameness but yet our differences to the table in healthcare and in STEM education across the fields. That if you have everybody at the table that looks like you, they're probably thinking like you, they're probably from the same background, so they don't bring much to that conversation. And she was able to talk about it on a global basis, that when we talk about healthcare, we need everybody from every different background, because we all have different experiences that have shaped us and different insights. So I think the kids are starting to get it. We just need to keep sharing it and encouraging it.
With that. Kirsten?
So I'd add to that we also need to demand structure that reduces the space that the bias can happen. What do I mean by that? I mean that, it's important to go through in an organization and say, okay, we're going to set up rules around position descriptions. They will be skills-based, not degree-based. The salaries will be posted. There are many excellent checklists around this, but some of the biased activities, some of these actions that we are trying to shut down are not going to change through professional development or one more workshop. It's going to change because you structurally shut out some of that activity. Now, the structural change won't make all the difference that it needs to. That's all got to happen in concert. But too often what I see is one more workshop, one more activity that doesn't step back and say, oh, wait a minute, this has to start at the top. The organization has to take ownership over it. And you need to create some rules and say, every job that's posted, I don't care what job it is, you can apply from within, and we will spend 2 weeks interviewing everybody internally before that job goes external, right? You are going to remove the degree. You can say preferred, but you are going to remove that. I don't care what the position is, you're going to post the salary range. Those kinds of structural changes go a long way towards starting to tamp down some of that activity that is unacceptable.
Thank you for sharing that. And speaking of biases, we have some bias in our first poll, and we're called out in the chat that all of the scientists we listed are for young people. So I apologize. I don't know my scientists. I hope you can all see the results. Bill Nye with a resounding 45%. So give a shot on. But yeah, we're seeing that in the chat. The structural challenges and barriers and process can be so helpful for that. But even then, I was working with a firm who was very excited to remove resumes from their hiring process, and they did a questionnaire, and they still hired all white men from Harvard. They had really thought they solved it by taking away the resumes. But sentence structure, how we tell stories, how we write, all of these biases that we bring in that are beyond race, gender, sexual orientation, and gender identity, that are really inextricably intertwined with how we communicate. And we found some other solutions for that firm, but that's for another time. Let's pop up the second poll. I think this one is less biased, Dianisha, is it? Who inspired you to love science? And I don't have names in here. I didn't say like your Aunt Millie. I just kept it really general. Yes, and if it's the other, put it in. And if it's one of our panelists, put it in caps. So absolutely. I'd love to, talk about the power of mistakes. In improv, we believe in the power of mistakes. We call them train wrecks because they happen in front of an audience. But in science, biosciences and STEM, mistakes also fuel innovation. We could talk about your successes, and John mentioned a few of your successes as we started, but I'd love to hear from each of you, what presumptions or mistakes have you made in the space of creating access for STEM for, youth and education, and what did you do to pivot and to grow and to be an improviser? Frederic's laughing, so he goes first.
Okay, I gotta jump in here. So do you want my mistakes in numerical order or alphabetical order? I made a lot.
Yes, we love it. Yes, give me the highlights.
One of the things, one of the persons I really respect is Dean Kamen. He wasn't on your list of great scientists or engineers, but he's one of the greatest engineers in this country. He's the person who invented the Segway, but he invented so many more important inventions and technologies for us that help make our world better. He has 450 patents, the most patents of any living American right now. He has this mantra at his company. It's called DECA. Dean Kamen. It says, when you walk into all these rooms in his company, it says, fail fast and fail often. And that's such an important point that I think everybody needs to embrace, whether STEM or otherwise, that it's okay to make a mistake as long as you learn as much as you can from that mistake and pivot, do something else, do another experiment, pick another idea, fail on that, keep moving. But if you iterate at a rapid enough pace and process what you've learned through failure, you're gonna get to that success. And I think that's amazing. In terms of my personal mistake and what got me into science, which is where you went with this, Brooke, I'll be honest, I don't have scientists in my family. I like, my parents are from the Caribbean. I grew up in Montreal, Canada. I consider myself the white sheep of the family because I went into science. And I went into science because one of my earliest mistakes at the age of 9 is I had my first video game. I begged my parents to let me buy this hand-to-hand video game. It was called, I'm dating myself, it was called Coleco Head-to-Head Football. Late
Who's
70s,
heard of it?
early
Get in
80s.
the chat. Get in the
If
chat.
you know it, you've dated yourself as well. But anyway, so it took these square batteries, these 9-volt batteries, and at the time, these games were energy efficient, so it would burn through these batteries. I didn't have any money. I couldn't keep replacing the battery. So I did what I thought was a bright idea. Went down in the basement, found an old lamp, cut off the cord of the lamp, and opened the back where the battery plugs. And those of you know, there's that red and black wire, right? And so you unattach the wire, I attached the edge of the lamp cable, I plugged it into the wall. Best 10 seconds of my life. I was playing the game. I was so excited. I solved all the problems. Like, I'm gonna play this before school. I'm gonna play this after school. I never need batteries again. 11-second, boof. It blew up, charred the whole outlet, big old flames. My dad, he'd lived in Canada now for like 30 years. He did not have a West Indian accent unless he was pissed. He ran down the stairs like, son, what are you doing? You're trying to burn down the house. But for me, that was the greatest mistake. And all jokes aside, my parents really allowed me to explore. And that mistake made me, that was my aha moment, where I realized this thing called electricity is something more complex than just clicking on a switch and getting light or plugging an outlet. That there's something mysterious happening behind the wall. And that got me hooked. I was curious, and that led me to a career in science.
That is amazing. Wow. Oh my gosh. I don't, it's a great story of a mistake. And I'm glad your parents were so supportive.
Absolutely.
Let's move as we share our poll to our teacher to hear about our mistakes. Kelly, let's move to you. Since teachers are who inspired us to love science among our participants the most, talk to us. What mistakes or assumptions have you made, and how have you grown from them? And how did you electrocute yourself?
I think we all have those stories, but how am I going to follow that, Frederic? That was amazing. I think I probably plugged something into a wall I wasn't supposed to. Trying to figure out how phones work. I think I probably cut my grandparents' phone line once or twice, got in trouble for that. I was known for taking the toaster apart because I wanted to know how it worked. Couldn't put it back together because, I was little. So just, we didn't need the toaster.
Oh my gosh. So pretty much what you're saying is having a scientist in the family means all of your stuff is destroyed. This is what I'm learning.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I was checking in. this isn't my area of expertise. We're all agreeing.
And as an adult, you're a little more careful with your kids because you're like, nope, that's going to hurt. But I got to let them make mistakes. So, I think as teachers, we all make mistakes over the years. And it's just owning up, whether it's something I say in class, whether it's a term I mispronounce, it's just owning that to the students is, I think, really important. So I'm trying to I can't follow Frederic. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. You can keep thinking. And Kirsten can jump in and take this. This is the power of the team. Give Kelly a second to catch herself.
Nah, I'm good. So, if you've ever been, I don't know how many of you were athletes growing up, but I did swim competitively, and I thought, oh gosh, I've always done freestyle. I think I'm gonna, I really want to try this butterfly. And after begging and begging and begging my coach, he threw me into a 200 butterfly in a long course pool, which is about 50 meters long and back. And when I turned on the wall for 50 meters to come back, the next place person, which means I'm last, was climbing out of the water. So here I am, dead last by 50 meters. Everybody's watching. And what struck me was I had to finish. I couldn't stop in the middle of the lane. And I think a lot of that with teaching is we have to keep going even when we make mistakes. It was very humbling. I am not a butterflyer.
I think it's the hardest stroke. So I feel like you really set yourself up. Yeah. It was hard.
So not as exciting as, blowing the house up, but,
You're looking at Dionysia and I, we are the choir kids. I would never in a million years even get in the pool. So that story is amazing and such an inspiration, I love even modeling that behavior for kids. Hey, I can make that mistake and I can own it. It can be something small, which I love. Kirsten, your turn.
All right, well, Frederic talked about numeric, alphabetical. I'm going to go chronological, take a very recent mistake because there's just so many to choose from. And this is a story about underestimating youth. Never underestimate the young people, the next generation that you are surrounded by. We are very proud to be part of a national project where we are really re-examining how we represent gender at science centers and organizations like that around the country. And we have a wonderful grant to work on that. And it's a terrific challenge for us because in all honesty, we do have a representation goal and checklist that we use with all of our marketing and education material, that if there's image of people, we go through and we want that to be representative of the county in which we're based, right? So marketing knows to stick with that. Exhibits, as we go through and have images and exhibits. So we tend to think about making sure that when our guests who come in who are Black and brown, that they can look around them and see in our exhibits, in our marketing, in our programming, people who look like them. Well, this grant is really inspiring us to think on the gender side of that. And there's a lot of data collection that needs to be done for the grant around the museum. You can imagine going through not just every page on the website, but also going through and saying, okay, we're going to look at all of our marketing materials, everything that is being done in our exhibits, and look at how gender is represented. Sorry, the cat feeding is happening right as I'm presenting.
This is the joy of what's happening in our worlds right now. There's no such thing as work-life lines. Don't worry about it. Cats need dinner too.
Right on time.
Right on time.
The best part about this is he's not even fazed by the fact that he's walking.
I know, he's like yeah,
this is just a typical Thursday over here.
I walked in another one of Kirsten's webinars. Are you kidding? Well, whatever. It's a day with the Y in it. So we needed data collection help, and we have these great teen who come in after school and on the weekend, our Great Science Academy youth, and we got a cohort together who's interested in evaluation, and they're going around and doing all this data collection around how men and women are represented because we have this wonderful grant. Well, they come back to me and they say, we are so disappointed. Can we give a presentation? And I thought, wow, we've really blown it on how we're representing women in STEM in our exhibits and on our website. And I can't believe it. I thought we were better than this. No, they pushed further and they said, why are you thinking about this as men and women? We see no acknowledgement that conversations about gender are well beyond this. There's a lot of presumptions in this data collection sheet on how you even note that someone is male or female. I mean, they really called me to task to say, this is a very narrow view of sex and gender, and you've got to fix it. So they did a terrific presentation. I brought it back to the national group and said, what are we going to do? Because saying that we're just looking at women in STEM is important, but it's too narrow. It's not enough. And I will be very honest, never would have occurred to me to think about that. And I made a big mistake, which I really try not to do, in underestimating the teens who are part of our organization.
And what an awesome lesson, and how awesome that they're like, we have a PowerPoint on how wrong you are.
Yes, they did.
Really, you know what I mean? That's what kids are great for. They're like, we're not just going to tell you, we're really going to make you sit in it. Thank you so much for sharing those in such a powerful discussion. I want to share our third poll with you, which is really also an opportunity for the chat. We were talking on our panel prep discussions about today and about a new series on Amazon called Radioactive. And if you've seen it, great. If not, awesome. Maybe check it out. But get in the chat. What shows, podcasts, media are you taking in right now that's kind of feeding that science bug that you maybe are missing out on? So I want you to share in the chat if you've never heard of it. And I don't know, we should have been sponsored by Amazon Video, because now everyone's going to watch it, and we should have gotten a cut of that next time. Dionysia, I got to think that through. So definitely share in the chat, and you know what you like to do right now and engage in media wise, and what the platforms are for that. We'd love to hear about it. And I'm always looking for something else to binge. So I want to talk about, you know, what we're facing now. So we've referenced the challenges and unprecedented time and and it's the new normal. What am I missing? What other really frustrating phrase you keep hearing all the time? I have to be missing one. Am I missing one?
I don't know. There's so many.
So many.
Pandemic.
Pandemic. Yes. Whatever you want to call it.
We're all in this together. You know.
Oh, we're all in this together. Yes. Oh, Dionysia. Yes. Oh, how could I miss that one? So in all just, we are obviously have been hearing this for 5 months, but as we think about this new normal, and as my dogs bark because they're hungry, and Kirsten's cat gets fed, and we manage the obliteration of the work-life balance that maybe barely existed for any of us to begin with, you know, how are we overcoming the barriers to reach youth at a time when, you know, we take for granted things like internet connection, and we're seeing that is just an incredible privilege? And how are we reaching, you know, kids? And we've talked a lot about this, you know, on the panel's discussion, not always necessarily in the cities, but in rural places where there's even less access to internet, and access to internet right now equals access to education more than ever. So, you know, how are we facing the barriers that certainly existed before the pandemic, but are really exacerbated right now?
Well, go ahead.
I'd say, I know from our school system standpoint, we're making sure that every student has a computer, every student has a laptop. From an Eastland-Fairfield standpoint, the homeschool that I'm at is doing the same thing. They're trying to communicate with their students to see who does not have access to internet and making that possible. I think Columbus Public had hotspots set up around the city where students could go with their tablet to get online and work. So that's helpful. But I think keeping the lines of communication open, frequently reaching out to the students, more than, well, I didn't see them online for 2 or 3 days, I'll keep trying online. Well, they're obviously not able to get online, so pick up the phone, make a phone call, make that personal connection with our students. That's what you know, we're trying to do this way with that. So I think that's really important to keep just talking to everybody and doing it that way.
Kelly, I love that personal connection. We talk about it so much. And again, talking about generational diversity, which is one of our topics when we train folks, you know, sometimes that fear of picking up the phone, it's so millennial, right? We'll text you for an hour and a half, but if you call, we throw our phone in the river. We can't pick it up. Yeah, you know, what does it mean to have personal connection, and the power of our tone of voice, or if we can, you know, get on a phone call instead of just an email, makes such a difference in how we can connect. Frederic, and then Kirsten.
Yeah, so look, Brooke, I love that question. Fantastic question. One of the things that we're doing is we follow the trends. You know, Pew has a bunch of studies, Yale, U.gov. They've done all these studies to look at connectivity, and you know, who within society has connectivity. And it turns out, or who has a mobile device or a laptop or a computer home. It turns out 93 to 95% of underserved populations actually have a smart device. What they don't have is the actual broadband or the connectivity in their homes. And so they're calling these, you know, digital deserts. And so one of the things we did is at COSI, if you're from Central Ohio, you know, we have this program called COSI on Wheels, like, you know, Kirsten Ellenbogen has them at her establishment as well. These are trucks that our educators drive around. They go to schools or community centers, they unpack the truck, they do these cool science shows, they last for 3 to 5 hours. People are excited. Well, we can't do that in a pandemic situation because schools aren't open. And now that they're opening, some are opening, some are not, they're not taking outsiders to come in. So we had these great trucks, the capacity to drive not just throughout Ohio, but actually cross state lines, but we can't do it. So myself and the team said, you know what? We're going to take these trucks, trick them out. Literally, it is Pimp My Ride, COSI style. And I'm not joking. We have sound systems in the trucks. We have these big TVs, and we drive to these community deserts and underserved populations, but we've also included with the truck as hotspots. So these trucks actually have full Wi-Fi. So they'll pull up into different areas in the community, especially where they don't have community, don't have connectivity. And we work with the school districts. We work with the Hunger Alliance, work with a bunch of different community partners. We get the message out, and on any given day in a 4-hour period, anywhere from 100 on a bad day to 500 cars pull up, and the kids and adults come with their handheld devices. They download for free our app, and they download all this great digital content on their device. And when they go back home, even if they don't have connectivity, it's on their device, and they can access, in our case, all this STEM educational material for free, and we love it. So COSI has Pimp My Ride, digital access style to curb these digital deserts.
Love this. Who was the rapper on Pimp My Ride? Was it Ja Rule? It wasn't Ja Rule.
Ja Rule, man, of course.
Was it? Oh my gosh, yes.
I don't know how you know Ja Rule and pass the bar on your first try. You are an enigma.
I'm the unicorn for sure. I don't know. I was a lucky guess. I just remember he put shag carpet in a van once, and I just was like, that's gonna get candy or something stuck in it. I don't know. It seems risky. It better come with a Dyson. I want my practicalness. Oh, Kirsten, I'm sorry you have to follow that Ja Rule reference up, but I want to get your answer before we ask my favorite question, which is my last question. Go for it, Kirsten.
No, that's awesome. I'm still going on if it's candy or what getting stuck there.
I know, like it's muffin crumbs or something, carpet. It's just risky. It's risky.
Okay, all right. So first of all, it's so much. And back to some of our earlier conversation, I think what's been so critical is making sure we're not making presumptions about what's needed. So I think what's been most compelling is working with our local school districts and making sure that we're identifying what it is that youth need most. And I'll tell you again, this can go back to the mistake question. One of the presumptions locally was that for Cleveland youth, staying indoors, having to be inside for such extended periods of time was just adding massive amounts of stress. Wonderful educator, Daniel Gray Contour, went around, did interviews, talked to youth in Cleveland, said, how has it been during the pandemic? What's most stressful? What is it like having to just really be under the stay-at-home order? And a lot of the youth came back to him and said, feels kind of normal. The safest place for me to be is at home, indoors, not playing outside. Gosh, that sounds like what I always do. So that's not been super stressful. Let me tell you what the stressful parts are. Bam, bam, bam. And then would outline this whole other area. So that was a big wake-up call for all of us to really start honing in on, okay, we can't just take one approach on this. And so we've been working with our Northeast Ohio STEM ecosystem. And if you've not heard about these ecosystems, there's one around Columbus. If you just Google STEM ecosystems, you'll see there's a nationwide network of us, more than 60 of them across the nation. And we coordinate across all of the informal learning environments, across the schools, the libraries, all of those kinds of organizations. We come together in our regions or cities, or in some instances, there's a statewide ecosystem, and we coordinate. So we just finished a big mapping exercise across Northeast Ohio to say, what are all the resources and opportunities that everybody can offer? And now Cleveland Metro Schools and a number of other organizations are taking that to say, I see. So the Modern Art Museum can take 20 students a day here, and that'll be their place to go, get a strong web connection, do their schoolwork while we're running virtually. The Boys and Girls Club over here can provide this, and that. And we are creating this region-wide map of what everybody's going to offer. Because in the end, some of the needs that are coming up are surprising. Now, we know the digital piece is needed, the a good place to be is needed. We're providing much of that through scholarships with our Learning Lab program. But some of the other elements of being a food distribution site, being a hotspot distribution site, all of those are really coming out of that mapping exercise that we've been in Northeast Ohio. So I'm eager to find out the other ways we're going to be helpful. But I would strongly encourage in your area, if you're not hearing about these mapping or survey exercises going on, remember to ask.
I love that. And I think, the assumptions we make about communities happen so much, and we just, never have the conversation, because it's hard to have that conversation and really actively listen. And all of our tanks are low right now. So making that space and making sure we can have those conversations and not be proactive instead of reactive there. So we're not just doing what we think is best. I love that. All right, we're going to get to our last question. And by the way, there were some great suggestions for podcasts in the chat. I know our panelists have some. So panelists, feel free to pop in your favorite podcasts while I ask this last question, which is also, by the way, a question I want everyone in the chat to answer. And I'm going to make Dionysia answer it too, which is, if you could tell your 9-year-old self something, what would it be? So I'll go first. If I could tell my 9-year-old self something, it would be, stop taking tap classes. It's not worth it. You look great, kid, but you're not going to use it in the future. And it's your poor parents are going to have to sit through so many dance recitals. And also keep singing, never stop singing. That's what I tell myself. Dionysia knows I'm terrible at dancing. Dionysia, what would you tell yourself, your 9-year-old self?
Oh my gosh. Actually, I'm gonna stay sort of on topic with this one. I'm gonna tell my 9-year-old self that math isn't that hard. Buckle down and do it. You're gonna be okay. I think that's about the age I decided math was really hard, and I just decided that was the case for a long time. So I would give myself a math pep talk.
Love it. All right, our panelists, let's hear from you first, Frederic. What would you tell your 9-year-old self?
So 9-year-old-ish, I should tell you, I'm Canadian by all disclosure. As I mentioned earlier, my parents are West Indian. Growing up as a Black Canadian kid, you're gonna either be a rapper like Jay-Z or Biggie, or you got a jump shot like LeBron James or Dr. J. I told myself, 9 years old, stop acting like you can rap. Get into something that you can do. Study, read, come up with something. And that's when I blew up my game, and the rest is history.
Oh my God.
I told myself to back off from those dreams of lyrical game and super fame, because I ain't have it.
Well, we'll make you rap sometime, but not now. That's amazing.
Don't do it, Brooke.
You're like, it's not worth it. Oh, you don't want it. Oh, great. Kelly, you're up. What would you have told your 9-year-old self?
Oh gosh, I would say keep singing out loud. Don't care what the other people in the cars next to you look like you at. Just keep building it out. I am definitely not an opera singer. I'm not a singer at all, but I love to sing, and a little self-conscious along the way. Didn't, kind of got cut from middle school choir, if that tells you anything. But keep singing out loud, because
first of all, they shouldn't have cut you.
Just keep doing it.
No one should ever be cut from middle school choir. It's never good.
I was not cut from choir. That's terrible.
Yeah.
You know what? You know what, Kelly? I was the only girl cut from the junior high volleyball team. So yeah. I feel like our paths led us in the right direction, and certainly singing in a 4-hour Russian opera was really worth my time. So glad I did that. That was great. All right,
Kirsten, I was the only girl tenor in 7th grade, and that was, so
like, we don't know what to do. Oh, that's amazing. Oh my gosh, Kelly, thank you for sharing that. Kirsten, you're up. What would you have told your 9-year-old self?
I'm still getting over, being in middle school is hard enough, but being the only female tenor, oof, yeah, that's
rough, isn't it?
It was pretty
rough. Yeah, so 9 years old, I wanted to be a lawyer because it seemed like the things you could be were a doctor, a lawyer. There was a short list of options, but if you would ask me what I spent my time doing, I was mixing random chemicals in the basement, hence John's introduction of the random explosions in my house that my parents were extremely tolerant about. Sometimes it resulted in nice things like growing pretty big blue crystals, but more often than not, it resulted in a mess, but I really loved doing it. But I had not connected the dots that was a career interest. And in fact, it took me quite a while, and it took, as always, that teacher tapping me on the shoulder and saying, you know, you really seem to like this, but all you talk about is doing the pre-law this or the club about that. Why aren't you doing some science things? So I do owe Mrs. Benson for that career, total shout out Mrs. Benson, for that career shift for me. And it would have been good if I would have been thinking about that earlier. So that's what I would have nudged my 9-year-old self about.
And maybe mix the chemicals out in the backyard. The basement seems risky from a ventilation perspective. Frederic did this in the basement. You're doing this. I mean, it's hidden, right? This is the hidden thing you do in the basement.
Yep.
Of course, Brooke, the lawyer, will talk about, liabilities of being in the house and blowing stuff up. Kirsten, you're golden in my books.
Exactly. Blow it up in the basement.
Exactly. Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, I want to open this up for any questions for our panelists. If you want to put them in the chat, raise your hand and we can take you off mute. But I'd love to hear any questions that you have for the panelists. Of course, throw them in the chat if that's easier for you. But I want to thank everyone for coming. It has been such a joy, and you are not off the hook. We still have 5 minutes. So if you don't have any questions, I of course have backup questions, because I never end a session on any questions, because that means no one's asking any questions and everyone's getting off early, and I refuse to do that. And I don't care what time happy hour is or if you need to feed the cats. So does anyone have any questions for our esteemed panelists? You'll never get them together again. This is a moment, people.
It's a moment.
I want to ask
one, Brooke.
Oh, go for it. Yes, Scott, go for it.
Oh, how can we, as a community or just people on this call, help support your efforts at COSI, GLSC, and at Fairfield, Eastland-Fairfield?
There's Scott, BioOhio, coming through. All right, who's up?
Like, are you taking applications for that Pimp My Science, bubble team?
Oh my gosh, why don't we call it Pimp My Science? That's just amazing. Kirsten, what are you going to say?
So I'd say 3 things. First is, I think all of our organizations, probably not our schools right now, but certainly, Great Lakes Science Center, we just did an orientation and brought in some new volunteers. We're always looking for great people to come in and work with us on a regular basis at the Science Center. So volunteering is always extremely helpful. Second is just speaking out about what you're hearing about. We, as part of that larger STEM ecosystem, certainly speaking from the perspective of COSI and Great Lakes Science Center, people don't always think about us as key education partners. Our schools mostly know that we are, but that broader community, people in the voting booth, our elected officials, those who can really make some change to help all of us through this difficult time, spreading the word about the good work you're hearing about would be a huge help. Third thing I would say is just, make sure that as you're talking in your community, as you're talking among your neighbors, on your Facebook neighborhood page, your Nextdoor page, that you are bringing up some of the issues that we are talking about. There's a lot of concern about equity of the pods that are forming to support students as schools are going virtual or just as an alternative to school. There are so many equity issues coming up right now. So if anything today has inspired you from Kelly or Frederic or myself, please share that to a broader audience.
Love it. Thank you. Kelly?
Yeah, I would say keep reaching out, or if we reach out to you to volunteer or to be a mentor, it's because we respect you and we respect your opinion. And it's important for my students and all students that they have somebody to look up to, even if somebody will give them 5 minutes to look over a proposal, have a short conversation. And honestly, in this time of this digital world that we're in right now with the distant learning, the students are actually a little bit more accessible to have a 5-minute Zoom call to go over something. So I think sometimes it can be, I don't want to say scary just to kind of reach out, but we really, really, really need our experts in the field out there to relate what they're doing to the students and be of help.
I love that. And Frederic?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for that question / offer. of support. Two things. One, I echo what both my esteemed panels said, so I don't need to repeat that. Absolutely what they said. And secondly, wear a mask. Tell everybody you know to wear a mask. Tell everybody you know to practice social distancing. The sooner we do this comprehensively as a community, locally, regionally, nationally, the sooner we'll have a better chance of getting out of this, like other nations have done, including north of the border, Canada. Let's do that. We can get back to society normally and have the good fun that we like.
Love the shout outs for Canada today. Didn't know where we were going to go today, but love it. Love it. So I want to acknowledge there was some questions about shifting the cultural environment that we don't have time to get to, but what I'm going to do, you all signed up with email addresses, and I have a couple really great articles that I'm more than happy to share. I'll reach out in the coming weeks with those about shifting cultural environments and what to do. But I want to be really respectful of both our panelists as well as you all and say thank you all again. We do this at ImprovEdge to applaud, so please get your hands up. I don't care where you are. I don't care if anyone can see you. Applaud our amazing panelists who were fantastic. Thank you so much to Rashawn from AtriCure and from our video for Bio. And thank you so much, BioOhio, Scott, Jen, and John. You've been absolutely delightful partners, and ImprovEdge is so lucky to work with you. So thank you so much again, Kelly, Kirsten, and Frederic. And everyone have a safe and masked and lovely night. Bye, y'all.
Yeah.
Oh, all the chats, yes. Thank you so much.